Hello, and welcome back to the Thursday Night Kissaten podcast. Thursday Night Kissaten is a podcast that we talk about Japanese TV shows, movies, books, and other pop cultures. We update weekly every Thursday night around 5 p.m. This podcast is written and hosted by me, Cordelia. Hello, my dear listeners, and welcome back to the Thursday Night Kissaten podcast. It's always a pleasure to have you here, and I hope you're doing well. In the last episode, we began exploring a side of Tokyo that often gets overshadowed by its beautiful, glamour image, the side of where women struggle with the poverty amidst rosing this beautiful skyscraper street. We took a dive into the high cost of university tuition fee and the burden of the student loans, uncovering how these facts trapped many young women in a cycle of debt and depression and forced themselves into the sex industry. Today, in part 2 of the Tokyo Poverty Woman, we're going to shift our focus to the other two more systematic issues that push this young woman further to the trap. One is the rise of the non-permanent employee system, which is a direct manifestation of the misogyny and the lack of the support system. While Tokyo may be one of the richest cities in the world, this wealth is far from equality, and especially when it comes to gender. Honestly, why are women in poverty? Well, here's the answer that the author found, that the non-permanent employee, including the temporary workers, contract workers, this already became a system that in many big companies or small companies in Japan today. Those people who are hired on an unpermanent employee system, that they perform exactly the same tasks as the permanent employees, but without the benefits and job security. And if a company faces difficulties, these workers are the first to be laid off. And most of them, according to the data that we received, that more than half of the employees, 70% around them, are female. Japan revised their labor law twice, which first time was in 1999 and the second time was in 2004, calculating the growth of the non-permanent employment system. And according to the Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare, 40% of Japan's workforce is in non-permanent jobs, and the rate for women even higher at 55% to 70%. And in some places, due to the budget, the government has outsourced the job traditionally held by the public servants, and such as those in child care facilities and libraries, to non-permanent employees to lower the cost. The author believes that in these areas, the government paralyzed the cost saving, resulting in this widespread low wages things. Like, for example, in the caregiving industry, the wage gap is huge. By 2025, Japan is expected to have a shortage of 380,000 to 1 million caregivers. Originally, the public institutions provide the care for the elderly and disabled, but in the April 2000s, Japan implemented a long-term care insurance system, opening the sector to private companies. and the entire requirement, the entry requirements for caregiving industry are low, and with even, let's say, a ramen shop owners able to start a private care business. And to address the unemployed, the government launched a program in 2009 to introduce the unemployed individuals without work experience or special skills into the caregiving industry. And additionally, with the low-wage foreign workers were brought into the field to the caregiver shortage. However, still the caregiving industry is plagued with the issue, including with illegal employment practices, elder abuse, and even more. Of course, many of those caregivers even without a license and certificate and professional training. And right now the solution was to import a lot of foreign laborers, which is exactly very similar to what North America is doing. There is a language barriers, and there's a lot of culture shocks, and even until today that the caregiving is the this is a funny thing, that caregiving is the lowest paid professions in Japan. And with the women making up the 70% of this workforce, all of them are being paid even lower the minimum wage. And that's the reason why, as a result, caregiving has become a major source of poverty for women. This is the reason that there is a terminology that in Japan that this kind of situation related with many other situations like the tuition fee, they are called as the government-made poor, referring to that the non-permanent workers in the government agency for the public facilities who earn lower wages and live in poverty. It's because of the government decision that made the situation. Here example, that person that this author interviewed. Let's call her last name is Fumula. Fumula is a 37-year-old library assistant in Tokyo, and she is a very typical example of this government-made poor situation. And then she showed the authors her pay stub, and it was clear that she was struggling. She only earns 2.04 million yen a year. That is only about $6,000 and far below the average annual income of the 2.81 million yen for Japanese women a year. I think, and then after tax, Fumula took home only 1.6 million a year, or let's say 133 yen a month. That is only around $3,000, and which is not enough to live in Tokyo. That's the problem, because she lives in Tokyo. And Fumula lives in a welfare housing unit and an old apartment 15 minutes from the northeast station, and even so, the rent is 50,000 yen a month. Her apartment has no TV, no computer, and her phone was bought on a second-hand online store. And due to her finance situation, she leads a very, she said, boring and plain and lonely life. She barely can go out eating or go shopping or hang out with friends, and after work she goes to nearby supermarket and waits for the discount before heading home. The discount usually show up an hour before the supermarket close. Although Fumula likes her job and her faith in the public service, her work has trapped her in poverty. She worries about her future. She doesn't have enough money for retirement. And also the worst, she actually on a contract. She's not a permanent worker. Well, she already working in industrial for many years. And she has been trained and has certificate in the library science. If she wants to continue working in the library, she will have to apply for another unpermanent job position at a different library when she turns 39 years old. Oh, here's another note I need to give to the listener here, that in Japan, in most East Asian country, many jobs that they have age limitation. If you're a female and you are over 35 years old, a lot of places, they don't want to hire you. Yeah, that's the reality. As a person who used to work in the library, when I see this data here, I just feel very sad that the author also feels that it's unfair for hardworking women like Fumula to endure such a hardship. Moreover, the expectation of the non-permanent employee system has been wildly in the gap of rich and poor in Japanese society, and also solidified the class divisions. There's no way for her to cross the boundary, and it's already not easy for her to turn to another professions, isn't it? Here is another research that I did, that according to the book New Japan's Class Society, the non-permanent worker systems expect for the part-time housewives from the lower class in society, their average annual income is only 1.86 million, and which is the poverty rate of 38%. The average income for female non-permanent workers is even lower. It's just 1.5 million yen. And this account barely covered the rent in the big city, let alone living expenses. And moreover, the companies are almost never promote non-permanent workers to a permanent position, and making it almost impossible for these workers to climb the social ladder, and further fostering the class divisions. I know that I actually asked the question, why doesn't it getting, I know I didn't really ask the question, but this is the questions that people usually will raise in the East Asian setting, that does getting married solve this problem? Does the two-income family will solve the problem? Indeed, having two incomes can make life easier, but the interviews with the divorced woman and single mother showed that marriage doesn't always lift a woman out of the poverty. It can even make it worse. So there's another person this author interviewed. Let's call her Yuli Sato, a 30 years old mobile phone collector. She's working for Bell or Rogers position like that, and she graduated from a private university, and after graduation she moved to Tokyo to work as a temporary employee because this is obvious. Usually most of female won't get a permanent position, period. And at age 62, Sato impulsively married someone that she met while drinking because she's thinking that marriage may improve her difficult situation. However, her husband became abusive. So eventually Sato divorced him and struggled to make ends meet with her mobile phone collection job. And Sato's annual income of 3 million yen is above the average of the Japanese woman, but after deducting the high cost of rent and utilities, she has little left. And by the time that payday arrives, her money is almost gone. As a non-permanent worker, Sato is often bullied by the permanent employees at her workplace and has little social life outside the work. Her life, she feels living is hard, and her situation makes her very depressed, and she sees no hope. She told the author that she wants to make extra money, and she already started working in the sex industry. She says she has no choice. And according to the official Japanese data, that 4 out of the 10 divorces are due to the domestic violence against the woman, and 1 in 3 women experience physical and psychological abuse from a partner. We asked the question, right? Will the marriage help? Well, Depends on where and with who, right? If a single mother has a children, more than 80% of them do not receive child support from the father, who may credit various reasons such as low income, lack of money, starting a new life, or simply just resentment towards their ex-wife. Even legal actions often fail to secure the payments and leading the single mother financial situation to the very struggle point. In the book, the author mentioned that the Ministry of the Health and Labor and Welfare find that as in 2019, there were over 1.23 million single mother households in Japan, and with an average annual income of just 2.43 million yen, less than half of the national average. Despite this hardship, the social security of the single woman and single mother in Japan is very unsuccessful, and which brings us to the third reason for female poverty here, the lack of supporting. Another person passing to the interview, let's call her Murakami-san. Murakami, a 45 years old single mother with 3 children in middle school, lives in a welfare housing near Tokyo, surrounded by the low-income families. Murakami started working at a food company when she was young, and at 27 years old, she married a colleague, became a housewife, and had 2 children. However, when she became pregnant with her second son, her husband insisted on an abortion. When she refused, he, the husband, divorced her and leaving her alone at the age of 32. Although Murakami mentally prepared herself for a hard life, she tried, but she never imagined she could fall into poverty. The family received about 70,000 yen a month in child support, and her ex-husband initially paid the agreed upon the 90,000 yen every month. But this ex-husband eventually stopped. As a former housewife, Murakami couldn't find a stable job and had to rely on low-income temporary work. Her life is like this. She wakes up at 5 a.m. every day to prepare lunch for her children and do laundry before taking the bus to work. She returns home in the evening to cook and do housework, often working until after 11 p.m. And after that, she earns only everything that she does, and she only earns $100,000 yen a month. Murakami's children have never eaten out and only eat discounted food. Murakami constantly worries about how to make ends to meet and is most afraid of unexpected bills, which keeps her awake at night, she said. Murakami told the author that she sees no hope, saying that just being alive is very painful. And at the age of 45, Murakami was very depressed and went to the welfare agency, supported by government, and want to apply for public assistance. But the moment the staff ended the consultation, as soon as they learned that she owned a car. In Japan, one of the conditions of receiving public assistance is having no assist like a house or a car. But for Murakami, a car is essential because she needs to commute between her home and her mother's house and who helps with the childcare. Her car is a gift from a friend years ago and has already traveled over 120,000 kilometers and has little value as an assist. Yet, the welfare agency, supported by the government, didn't listen to her explanation before dismissing her in 5 minutes. And she was jokingly told the author that how poor and how bad that we're doing, then was able and to help enough to ask for a single help. So many of Murakami's neighbors are also single mothers, but few qualified for the public system due to the very strict requirements. Murakami told the author that both she and most of her neighbors are suffering from the poverty. Murakami wanted to apply for the public assistant but couldn't. And another single mother, also mentioned in this book, Kawashima, didn't dare to apply for the public assistant because she wanted her 2 children to go to university. Kawashima, this person really left a huge impression on me, that she is graduated from University of Tokyo's graduate school in 1998 and became a clinical psychologist. She worked for Tokyo Board of Education, a psychiatrist hospital, and a university consulting center. She was once very achieved in her field, but struggled to balance work and childcare after marriage and childbirth. In 2005, she joined a governmental organization, and her work took a turn for the worse. What happened was the male permanent employees in the organization began harassing her over her surname. Kawashima was a researcher, so her work and achievements before marriage would be under her maiden name. Because she doesn't want to lose all her achievement and her research title, so she did not change her surname to her husband's after marriage. But that's the reason why she was harassed by her colleague, and until, to the result that she was forced to get a divorce to keep her maiden name just to get her research and title to be there. It's still owned by her. But it wasn't supposed to be a fake divorce, but it actually turned to the real one. Her husband cheated on her, after their fake divorce, and Kawashima and her 2 children will be abandoned by her husband, and then who never paid that 100,000 yen a month for the child support as he promised. He just escaped from it. And at work, Kawashima continued to endure the harassment from her male colleague. And if she ever left to work on time to care for her children, she was accused for not being dedicated enough to her work. And eventually, no matter how hard she worked, she and her female colleagues always received the lowest rating in performance evaluation and with no chance of promotion. In 2007, after over 2 years at the job, Kawashima began to experience the physical symptoms of her depression, stress, and anxiety. Her muscle strength decreased to a point that she could no longer to hold a pen steady, and even standing for too long period became difficult for her. Completely unable to work after that, Kawashima applied for and received an annual disability pension of about 2 million yen was given by a welfare department, but with 2 children still in school, her expenses were too high. Kawashima initially thought she could survive on 1 meal a day as long as her children's needs were met. But in reality, she and her children sometimes have to share a single loaf of bread. She could have applied for public assistance for children's support or child support, but these benefits cannot be combined with the disability pension. Here is the key, that if she received disability pension, she can't receive the child support. Why women are in poverty? And moreover, in Japan, the families receiving the public assistance are discouraging from sending their children to university. To ensure her children could attend university, Kawashima had no choice but to never apply for public assistance. And in Japan, many poor parents cannot afford to invest their children's education. But a few, like Kawashima, understand the link between the education and the future income. So she ground their teeth and tried to support their children to higher education. Isn't this a loop? We see the loops as here already, right? I bet these children, when they actually end up to go to university, they end up to take the student loan. And with the student loan, if one of their children is actually female, the moment this child graduated from university, or even in the university with this heavily spent, they have to take on part-time job, or eventually get into sex industrial. And within paying the loan, they are no guarantee to get a permanent full-time job, no guarantee that there's a promotion, and no guarantee don't know even when and how to pay off their loan. It's a trap. Something that no one can even avoid from this full cycle. In the recent years, the numbers of the job available to high school grads in Japan has been plummeted from 1.76 billion in 1992 to just 432,000 in 2017, and a decline of the 74%. It means what? A high school diploma is not enough. It has to be university degree. Academic performance are not only affects income, but also affects the children's academic achievements. Ochanomizu University, a very privileged women's university in Tokyo, conducted a study and found that a significant correlation between the family income and academic performance, especially in math. With a perfect score of 100, children from family earning at least 2 million yen a year scored 20 points lower on average than those who are family earning more than 15 million yen a year. Thus, the poverty is passed down from a generation to generation, as I just mentioned that cycle. Murakami's oldest son attended a tuition fee-free vocational high school and started working part-time 5 days a week in his first year to help support his own family. Her second son grades were too low to get into a regular high school, so he attended a technical school. She has a daughter. Her daughter already said that she didn't want to go to high school. Even though Murakami told her daughter she could afford public school, her daughter still shook her head, insisting she wants to work. And here's another personnel is mentioned in the book, and her name is Inoue. Inoue has experience similar to Murakami. Inoue was born into a very middle-class family in Tokyo and graduated from a prestigious private school and worked for a listed company. Even after her divorce, she didn't face any financial difficulties. She was doing well. But 8 years ago, Inoue's sister developed a mental illness and needed care. With their parents deceased, the burden fell onto Inoue's shoulders. So she quit her job to care for her sister because she couldn't find anyone, the caretakers, to do the job for her. Naively thinking that she still have maybe around 5 million yen could last for a while, and she could find another job later. She was too naive. It was impossible, but her sister's conditions didn't improve, and within a year, Inoue's savings were all gone. And at 47 years old, she couldn't even find a part-time job, and let alone a permanent one. Her daughter became the victim of her mother's bad decisions. Inoue's daughters have always excelled in schools and was accepted by a very prestigious private school. Inoue repeatedly asked the school to defer the tuition fee payments, but the school never gave a clear answers or mentioned dropping off, but only repeatedly asking, "What are we going to do?" So at the end, Inoue had to say, "Well, we will withdraw." The teacher signed off in relief, and her daughters cried. And the daughter just transferred to a online high school in her second year and started working part-time to pay her own tuition fee and living expenses. Inoue's daughter has a dream of attending a national university, but it didn't get in and ended up a highly competitive private university. However, to avoid the trap, the daughter dropped off after the first year. And this is what the author wrote in the book, and he says, as many poor families are there as they are, so too are the future of many children being taken away. Japan does have implemented many welfare systems to help the poor, but in practice, many women cannot fully benefit from those services. And as a result, the poverty is passed on from generation to generation. And here, this is the thing. Looking back for all those three reasons, let's not really just talk about the student loan, but the student loan also caused by the less support the family can take, right? Think about Murakami's 3 children. This is a very obvious result of misogyny. If the women are able to find their job, a permanent position with a good promotion, a lot of those problems can be solved, and it will stop at one point and won't pass from generation to generation. The misogynistic is one of the cause, and it's actually the main cause behind all this cycle. Why women in poverty? We know the answer. Japanese society's attitude towards property only boiled down to the belief that you're responsible for your own fate. You didn't work hard enough. You didn't make the right decision, so it is still you that the cause of your own poor situation. And it's actually always been considered as being poor is a personal failing, it's a personal choice. However, as we have been seeing through the stories shared in the Tokyo Poverty Woman, those women tried everything in their power to survive and yet still find themselves pushed into the shadow part. In the book's conclusion, the author expresses a deep promises about the situation improving. He believes that the chance of the growing poverty is difficult to revise, and given that the book was published before 2020 COVID pandemic, the TV show adaptation adds on how the pandemic only worsened the situation. Jobs were lost, businesses were forced to close, and poverty continued to breed more poverty. And for many, the suffering feel like an endless cycle, and passed from generation to generation with no clear way out. In the TV show, the main character's words resonate deeply to many people. As she said, as a single mother herself, she said, I thought the poverty was someone else's problem. This phrase resonated with me because I also was never imagined the poverty could be something that's so close to me, and I was in it. After moving to North America alone, I faced a harsh reality. And back in Vancouver, I lived in a shelter. And I'm not going to hide the fact that there was so many times that I have no money to buy food after paying my rent, and I rely on the grocery from others to get by. Food bank, cans, all those things. I was not even just close to poverty, I lived in poverty. This experience has given me a different perspective, one that makes the stories the Tokyo Poverty Woman hits so close to home, and it reminds that poverty is not just someone else's problem. It is a social issue that can affect on anyone, and requires collective empathy and action to address. I know as the writer even mentioned in the book, there's no way out, but it's worth to present this issue and take the action to address this. Thank you again for joining me today, and I hope this episode has offered some insight or perhaps even spark a bit of a reflection. If you have any thoughts, please feel free to share with us, and take care of yourself, and I will see you next time at the Thursday Night Kissaten in the next episode.